We're going to take a step back here from technology, or at least to the side, which may or may not be a relief to people in the audience. A couple weeks ago, Bain, the consultancy, and Altagamma released their 2014 Worldwide Luxury Markets Report. I don't know if anyone here saw that. Anybody? A couple people. OK, well, I'll tell you about it anyway. So if I'm repeating what you know, sorry. It said a lot of what you probably know, that shoes were a really big thing, that the US and Japan were the markets of the moment, and some of what you probably suspect, which is that consumers, unlike the stock market, define luxury very broadly, include art, hospitality, yachts, jets, food, wine, furniture, as well as clothing, watches, and jewelry. But what really stuck out for me was that their valuation of that broadly defined was approaching almost €1 trillion, which is bigger than even Apple's market cap. And that they said the way into that was, quote, "It's all about consumers, much less about markets." All about consumers, less about markets. What does that mean? It means people no longer necessarily buy where they live, they buy where they want and on what they want. And for brands, that translates as you can't just act global, think local, you have to act global, think individual. But who are those individuals and what actually do they want? Will big data tell us or not? To help answer that, I'm happy to introduce Massimiliano Fuksas, the founder of Studio Fuksas, an incredibly prolific architecture firm, and who completed the airport in Shenzhen and are working on the renovation of the Beverly Center. Alan Smith, the chief executive of the Four Seasons, and Johannes Torpe, creative director of Bang & Olufsen. Gentlemen.
Lady.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
OK, so do you know your customers? Who are they? Massimiliano.
No, it's I don't want to speak about today, but I want to speak 1955, Galbraith was speaking about what is, in one book, he was minister for Kennedy. Galbraith was the minister of Kennedy for economy, I don't remember, something like this. That he was speaking about the needs of people, what the people need. And what I think, what he said that is, was in 55 was very optimistic. People could do more and more and more. It was not sure that after was a depression, a crisis, it was increasing always the quality of life and the welfare. I think it was not wrong. I am optimistic, not as much as was Galbraith, but I think that is what the people need. We were speaking before about something. I tell you some small things. I am doing now a renovation of a palace in Mantua, in Italy, big palace, 15,000 square meters. It's enormous feet. It's a lot of square feet. 15,000 square meters. Can you imagine with the feet? It's a lot. I cannot say because it's always difficult to speak about square meters and feet. Then he say, after they start, he bought this person, very, very distinguished client. He said me, yes, but we have to share with the two children. Then 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. It's a beautiful building of the 17th century. And after he said, but I cannot use this I am 70 years old with my wife, we cannot use. And now after 1 year of renovation, he said me that it's not enough the space.
Not enough space.
He needs some other rooms, 50,000. Then it's like, I do a very secret project, but it's not so secret, for the Emir Al-Thani of Qatar, the young one. It's an island. I built all the island. It's a weekend house. It's 35,000 square meters. And they need some more rooms, some more, because the children needs perhaps have a babysitter, one more, something like there. And even my wife, I bought, very hard was for me to bought near Siena, near something they did in Florence, country house. I feel very rich, very good, near Siena. It's beautiful country house, old one. And she said, but it's like a hole. It's so small. I said, Doriana, but it's 1,200 meters, so we are two. Me and you. Then this is what is space today. It's not the same quantity that you can remember in Middle Age or the beginning of the century is moving. And after I can say something else about some more needs.
So space.
About space.
Alan?
You know, we get asked that question a lot, and I think that we think of our guest, if you will, as sort of a modern luxury traveler that has some very similar themes that characterize them across boundaries and locations of the world. I think among the more important ones are people desire to be recognized. They seek out customized service in a big way. They want to feel empowered about how they receive it. Technology plays a role in that. Related to that is this isn't necessarily the most patient group. They want things, there's a sense of immediacy they have. They want it when they want it, and that may be now, it may be some other time they prescribe, but it relates to that whole question of they want to feel empowered about how they receive service, how they use space. It relates to how space is designed and that it's more multifunctional and less prescribed, so they can choose how to use a guest room or a public space or what have you. The last thing I guess I would say is that it's a far more, what I would say, experiential consumer. For many of our guests, the further accumulation of material goods is just not a high priority. It's not life-changing. What is life-changing are the accumulation of experiences. And a big part of that, and one of the big challenges I think companies in our space face, is creating authenticity in every single thing we do, whether it's the manner in which someone's engaged when they come into a hotel, or the extraordinary experience they may have riding an elephant in Thailand. All of those things matter.
What is authenticity? Because this is another, we use a lot of words, I think, in this industry, and often we don't define them very specifically. So I'm just wondering what that means to you.
You know, good question. I mean, it's one of those soft, subjective qualities. You sort of know it when you see it, sort of thing.
It's like pornography?
But I suppose, although, trust me, that's not where we're going. There's a genuineness to it that can't be prescribed. I think one of the qualities that we look for in people who work for us, frankly, is emotional intelligence. You can't prescribe everything. You can't do everything by a script. And that's our consumer, our guest is incredibly discriminating. They can discern a fake, whether it's a luxury good, whether it's a way in which someone engages with them. And so cultivating that sense becomes really important. And that's why in a business like ours, for all the focus that's put on the hardware, these magnificent buildings people occupy, at the end of the day, what really matters is the culture and people who animate these places. It's a form of performance art that requires, as I said, a tremendous amount of emotional intelligence and, frankly, cultural sensitivity.
Johannes?
Well, I think to put it in the right way, coming from a background of design and architecture myself, working for Bang & Olufsen, and being Danish, you know, this brand is actually turning 90 years next year, which is quite remarkable for a technology brand, for a design brand. And when I arrived there 3 years ago, there was a new CEO, and what he searched for was also the authentic Bang & Olufsen, you know, the brand, and how do we engage with our customers and our consumers. And what we found out was actually what our customers wanted was magic. And I'm not talking about a magician coming in, you know, ding, ding, ding. I'm talking about that the products have to have an element of magic. And it's everyday magic, and it's also some of the gestures that, you know, the product has done during the years is like something mechanical magic, opening up in front of you. And every time we try to do something that does not add the magic, you know, in the history of Bang & Olufsen, we have more or less, you know, failed.
Give me an example.
Every time, no, let me put it this way. Every time we've done something that has magic, you know, for instance, the CD player with 6 CDs that can do like this, or you put your hands in front of the sound system, it opens up the overture, it gives you a magical experience instantly. And this is kind of what, you know, we engage our customers with is, you know, enduring magical experiences, which is a very difficult thing. And also to take that from product and take it into a retail environment, for instance, is highly, highly difficult.
I just adding on that, I think in a service business like ours, the magic is emotional connections.
Yes, sure.
That, you know, my wife and I had dinner last night with a couple who were sharing with us an experience they had in Bhutan, trekking through that magnificent country, and what was so profound, compelling to them, was the emotional experience they had in going through this and experiencing the countryside and the people.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add, which I think is going to increasingly become an important dimension of what luxury constitutes, at least in our space, is the ability to unplug. Because they were in a part of the world where, frankly, they couldn't get service, and
that's wonderful. It's the best part of the world. That is true
wonderful.
Luxury, ladies
and so there's this funny paradox in our, certainly I think, where on the one hand connectivity is really important, and yet for people to have those experiences that are, you know, profoundly rejuvenating, they need to be able to unplug.
But I can add something to that, Alan. Every year I spend maybe, you know, in Italy, North Italy, in the mountainsides, beautiful, in Lana, beautiful place, where you cannot get a cell phone reception. And I enjoyed so much.
Where?
I'm not going to tell people here, because then it's going to be spoiled forever. No, but I go there simply for no cell phone reception, and there's no television. There's just peace. And when you're a half-old man like me, you actually appreciate this kind of magic, natural magic.
No, but I think that it's too much people are speaking out about emotion, to have an experience in emotion. It's 10 years that people are speaking about emotion, and it's an experience. What is retail? It has to be an experience. What is the restaurant is an experience. Everything is experience. And finally, we have now Michelin. People are looking Michelin.
The car company.
They destroyed all the food in the world.
Yes, I agree to that. You are
They destroy it.
right.
The French people with the Michelin guide, they destroyed the food. We have no more one different from the other. Then, what is luxury is the differences between people.
Yes.
This is, we have to have the same idea. I can vote Democratic, of course, why not? Or Republic, no, not Republic, Democratic. Against Berlusconi, I don't know in which way you can do this. But anyway, you have to feel the difference between different people. I think individual version of the life has to be. Then, when I go in the hotel, I want to feel like I am the first one that are coming to the hotel. This is a luxury. Anyway, luxury is a brand. Everybody speaking against brand. Again, no logo. You remember? There's Naomi Klein, Klein, it's a German name. She's wrote about no logo. I think it's stupid things. It's 200 years, 300 years that 300 years, 500 years, that we are speaking about logo. Logo, what is that is some iconic. You are now in Miami, there are not many iconic buildings, not many iconic artists. What is iconic is that you can feel something. It's good when you feel.
Yeah.
Individual is the most important that we have.
Well, I think I'm incredibly struck by the fact that you're talking about emotion, unplugging.
We talk about magic.
Authenticity, magic,
Yeah.
and no one has said anything about big data, which, you know, if you've been reading the newspaper, like me, you know, it's all about big data. It's all about like what data is going to be able to tell people about their consumer and all this information that brands can gather so they know their consumer, but yet...
But
Well,
if I can just add one thing
please.
to that. So now, working a lot in China for the last 10 years, with many different you know, clients of my own, and also with Bang & Olufsen, opening stores in China with Bang & Olufsen, we experienced one thing which is quite fascinating. And this is actually when we open a new store with a new, you know, store concept where we have done rotating walls and you have done a lot of effects to make people, you know, to engage the consumer. So you sit down in the chair and you will be moved around in front of the television. It's quite magical.
This is only in China?
It will come to you as well. It's going to be, oh my God.
Move around in my chair.
So we have one in New York with rotating speaker walls. But what happens when, you know, the typical rich Chinese walk in to the store? And just to tell you, the typical rich Chinese is not a very tall man with a very tall lady next to him, not his wife, typically. And he walks into the store and he simply points with a big watch, a very big luxury watch. He points over at the rotating walls and he say, how much is that? And the dealer will walk over and say, which one? The television, sir? No, the whole thing. I want it all. So people actually engage in the way that they want to buy the interior of the store. Of course, we don't do after service of the interior of the store. We'll gladly sell you the TV and the speakers. But the funny thing is this.
Maybe you should go into home decor. I don't know.
Yeah, but we could do that as well. No, but the funny thing about this, so because we sell these luxurious technology products, people will walk in and they will look at the product and they will enjoy it. But for our smaller brands, when it comes to portable, you know, systems, people will more and more go online. And if you look in China right now, the big luxury, everybody in China says luxury. They walk in there and they actually don't go to the stores. They go to this, you have these big empty malls with terrible air quality, and you walk in there and they're just empty because people go online. And they will know exactly what they want to buy. And if they can get it online, why should they spend time walking into a mall? And this will be the future of the retail space as well. It's not a boutique, it is a showroom where you show your brand and you get the loyalty for the people.
Okay, but you didn't answer my big data question.
Yeah, no, but because it's irrelevant to this. So if you look at the big data, if you look at China, that is big data because people move faster than big data can analyze this country. It's interesting.
The data, frankly, really matters in our, if you think about some of the themes that I mentioned, recognition, customization, empowerment, that sort of thing. Underpinning that is knowledge of your guests. And so the flip side of the sort of the guest being highly empowered by technology is that we will, over time, be accumulating more information about them, more information about their preferences, more information about how they want to receive certain things, information about whether they want to be greeted in the lobby or whether they want to be able to go directly to their room. All of those things which give the guest great optionality in terms of how they're served, but us great insight into what they want. The key to, in my mind, and where, you know, ultimately the emotional intelligence, the people matter, is that the accumulation of this information, especially in a space as intimate as a hotel, cannot be perceived as being a creepy form of surveillance, frankly.
Right.
And people have to be very responsible and respectful in how they use it. And so in the right hands, it can be incredibly enhancing and enabling of a very high level of service. In the wrong hands, it can be really off-putting and make people run for the doors. So I think it really matters, and it'll be a big part of what you see going forward.
So how do you draw the line, though? I mean, how do you make sure that you're handling it in the, you know, that you are the right hands? And how do you prove that to, you know, to customers without just saying, like, we're the right hands?
I have to add one thing before you say this, because I have a good friend who's a hotelier, and I had a great party in a hotel some time ago. And the day after he said, now I will delete everything what happened in the hallways from the cameras, for sure. But in the future, you have to be able to, the party is only going on in the room. And in this way, I think there is a lot of, you know, the big data. You can collect a lot about your guests, which are kind of sensitive information. But I think it's a question of how you use it and how you, when you greet people, for instance, how much do you know? Do you know what I'm in town to do business for instance?
Right.
So it's a balance act for that.
But I don't believe too much to analysis. Because if you remember, 20 years ago, every people was thinking that we work with the fax and after email, and we can work home work, there are no people move anymore, we stay stability, and the city without traffic, without car. Then you know that in the last 10 years, the airplane increased the passenger over 300%. There are much more people. They are moving now than any time in all the history. Then analyze, I think, are something strange. I don't believe too much to them. I feel the people when I said once for retail, luxury retail, Beverly Hills Center. It started as a luxury retail, and now it's no more luxury. I want to be luxury again. That now we are doing to do luxury. What is luxury? To have the brand. But you can have another retail in another place in the world, I cannot say Azerbaijan or someplace, where luxury is Zara. Zara, you know, and all Spanish, Desigual, something like this, and are full of people. And then luxury is something, is differences between the countries, even the people. Young people, they like H&M. They don't like my Armani.
Not Livia, she doesn't
and they
like
afford
H&M.
it, that's why.
It's true, it's true. Then I am disappointed because I built for Benetton in Roma, one very big refurbishment, just for United Colors, for Benetton. And the day before the opening, in the central Rome, there is something glass, the most, and a few hours before the opening, Benetton sold for 180 million to H&M. But I tell you today, on newspapers in Europe, there is this is up to you, that my building in Frankfurt, my Zeil is a wild, very successful. My client sold for about $1 billion in Frankfurt in my Zeil. Then, what is luxury? Is if you do something and after they can earn a lot of money. With my design. With my design. When my clients say, one client wants to work with me, he asked to another. He said, Fuksas, is good one? Yes, I earned so much money with the project of Fuksas. I was disappointed. I was thinking that he can say, is Fuksas take care for MEP, for air conditioner has to be the quiet, very good. No, he said, Fuksas is good because I earn money with him.
It's business.
It's business. Okay, I have one question, and then we're going to open this up to the audience. We're going to go back to live questions with microphones, so prepare yourselves. Be there in a second. What do you do when the consumer changes? You know, there was a long time when, clearly the Chinese consumer was driving much of luxury consumption. The Russian consumer was driving much of luxury consumption. Those two bodies have somewhat changed their buying patterns, slowed, moved. So how do you respond to that? Because if you create outreach geared toward an assumption about a certain profile, and that profile changes because of geopolitical events, what does it mean for you?
Well, if I take it in the perspective of China, because I think it's a great example, the consumer in China is, in many ways, as you said before, Alan, as well, it's I want it now. This is really the demand. And when you create something by hand, beautifully made, very well crafted, you don't have a big stock. You don't have like 50 products waiting just for people to walk in and buy. So for us, it's been very important to do the anticipation of luxury, meaning that, for instance, if you buy a television, you get something now. You get the remote for the TV now. You can even get your name engraved into the back of it, so you know it's your remote. And this kind of behavior within electronics business is not something you've seen before. You might have seen it with the phones, with the Vertu and the other brands for that luxury segment. But for something, when you have to integrate it in your home, it is more difficult because you need actually to engage them, on a longer period of time, and you have to, build something into their house. They have to take it into their lives. So we also had a big challenge of actually making our products more domesticated. So they're easy to live with. So they're easy to have in an everyday life. Mm-hmm. And to actually keep the customers going, we spent a lot of time on creating a younger brand to be able to catch them. Because when you look at the Chinese consumer, the mid-market is enormously big. And the luxury consumer might dream about buying one bag right now because they don't have money for the save up for this bag. So you have to engage them on an earlier level. So for a luxury brand in China to continue this, I think they simply need to engage earlier and engage something that people afford to get them on the longer run and make something of a higher purchase.
One question: you sound like you're still having quite a good business in China.
Well, we have a business. Well, it defines because when you do electronic products, and you do design. If you do a handbag, people can go to Paris and buy it, but you don't go to Paris and buy an 85-inch television and carry it with you home. So this is our luck, and also our luck is that we need to service and do after service a long time, like you do in a hotel as well. You need to keep the consumer engaged in your brand.
Going.
But for America, it's more difficult for us.
But there are some things that is, for me, what is luxury for many people. If you ask to Armani what is luxury, he said Hermes. Or said Azzedine Alaïa. What is it? Because they, after years, you are always Hermes or Azzedine. The quality of a creation is very important. How much creation is inside. If there are not much creation, after 6 months finish. You have to improve always creation and intelligence of people that is doing. That this is what, when people go, you have to work a little bit more. This is really what, I tell you something. I did a gift, a very crazy gift to Doriana. And there's one bag, the biggest bag that Hermes did, crocodile, biggest. We are biggest. It's terrible, terrible against ecologists, against every people. That she arrived in, was the opening of Shenzhen, it was a reason. She arrived in a restaurant, Chinese restaurant, and people inside the restaurant, they watch the big bag, and they beg, hey, good, good. So I never seen in my life that for a bag, this. That's
what I'm talking about.
I did an airport. No, it's a bag.
Alan, do you want to talk about the consumers?
Yeah, look, it's a huge challenge for us because so much of the impression people draw of our brand is in the physical space they occupy. And so we've been talking about China. When we first entered China, we did it in the manner in which we had done it in other markets, sort of an understated luxury. Only to discover that for many of the consumers we were dealing with there, they wanted a far more iconic form of luxury, a wow form of luxury. They wanted far more diversity in terms of food and beverage outlets and very dynamic restaurant concepts. And so we've been evolving our presence there to match that. But to put it into perspective in terms of the challenges, a typical development cycle for one of our hotels, that's if everything goes according to plan, may be 5 years. And so you're placing a bet on how the consumer is going to respond to it 5 years from now. The Chinese market is evolving very quickly. The affluent Chinese consumer is evolving very quickly. So is there a likelihood as they kind of move on the scale of maturation that by the time some of these projects get delivered, you know what? They're going to have more preference for something a little more understated. And so it's, you know, I think you just have to stay very close to it. It's also why the service and the people, I keep coming back to that.
Very important.
The people and the service is sort of the ultimate mitigator of that risk, that you have to stay really close to them in that regard.
I had an interesting conversation once with Sidney Toledano, who runs Dior, who told me that he sends all his salespeople to hotel school to learn service.
It's a great idea. I went to the hotel school in Lausanne last week to speak, and if you look at the people and the way they approach, that's definitely the future of hospitality. Fantastic.
It's the future, frankly, of almost any business.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
the service dimensions will be what, in many respects, differentiate people, because otherwise, you're dealing with commodities.
Exactly.
And so it becomes really important.
The best one is in Florence. Your best
Thank you.
first.
Well, thank you.
Remember it.
I know.
You know.
Okay, anyone have any questions for the panel? Yes? The microphone is coming.
Thank you. This question is primarily for Mr. Smith. It relates to a conversation we've had throughout the past 2 days. People keep citing the ability to disconnect as a luxury, yet I think you'd have to agree in all your hotels you move towards improved connectivity as a luxury to offer your consumers. Airlines have certainly battled to have the best connectivity. And I think it's inevitable that even the remotest locations around the world will have connectivity. So we will lose that ability to disconnect. Do you foresee a trend in the future where you will be creating properties that are exclusively for those who don't want to connect?
You know, I think it's a great question, and it's funny because I read an article recently about a small lodge that had been built where, I believe this is right, there was copper wiring put in the walls to interfere with the transmission of any signals. And the point of the article, and I think there's a lot of truth to it, is as much as people want to, people can't help themselves. And so this was a physical effort to create barriers where people can't. I think it is quite possible that we will, at some point, deliver products where that is a clear part of the offering. That don't come here if you expect to be plugged in 24/7. And I think it's responsive to that fact that it's very hard for people to do it. My wife and I are always looking at our kids. You need to, put your phones down, but then we look at each other, and we're kind of, unfortunately, preoccupied with many of the same things. So I do think that creating situations where we help people, we're an enabler, we're a facilitator of people doing that, will be something that you will see.
Another question?
It's like the modern jail, actually. Yeah. For the luxury consumer.
I've enjoyed your comments, all of you, very much. And if you asked me, what do I want as a consumer, I would say a sense of uniqueness, both at retail and when I travel, the places I stay and where I visit. I don't want to see the same brands everywhere or the same architectural hotel or the same experience everywhere I go. So I'm wondering how you would respond to consumers who still value a sense of uniqueness and not a global marketplace where it's the same everywhere we go, and what we can do to continue to inspire that.
Who wants to take that?
Okay.
Take it.
You start?
You can all take it.
I think that individualism is individual. The choice, individual choice, is the future. Because I am thinking that we are to recompose, is English, recompose, to put together something that we destroyed in 18th century, in Renaissance. What was Renaissance? Why we are speaking so much about Renaissance, Rinascimento? Why? Because people could do a lot of things together. Could do a sport. I speak about Leon Battista Alberti. He could be an architect, could be a painter, could write, he can do sport, can write something about family. Then I think now we have to recompose, put together some pieces. Scientists, it's a problem of education. We have to give different education to our children. Then after you decide, you are alone, you decide with yourself what you have to do. You can do the same thing of 200 people, but you can do something else. His problem is the education. But the future is the new Renaissance. It's no more the concept of French culture that was saying, you know, French culture that was always the same with Illuminism, les siècles de lumière, that they said, this is history, this is philosophy, this is artists, we are together. All you are artists, art, cinema, movie, fashion. Every experience is the same thing. We are doing all together exactly the same, is creation. And why we have to do creation? Because everybody feels to have an expression for his own life. It was this, yes.
Alan, how do you deal with the question of...
Look, you highlight, I think, one of the absolute critical issues for a company like ours, which is how do you differentiate yourself in a very crowded market where, frankly, luxury in the hospitality business is becoming very homogenized. All it really takes to build a luxury hotel is someone with a lot of money. And there are a lot of people, true, but there are a lot of people in the world with a lot of money. They all have access to the same world-class architects, the same world-class interior designers, the same world-class restaurant designers. And so, you know, you can go into, if you travel enough, you can go into hotels and you say, wow, this feels like this restaurant, this one. And so there's this homogenization that's taking place, which is, I think, a real challenge for a company like ours to overcome. It's where I go back to the customization, the personalized service, the people matter. Because you simply, trying to win that product war, it's very hard to do. And so it comes down to the people dimension of this, that how do you create this sense that when you arrive, you are being treated very uniquely. The experiences you're having are very distinctive. And you can differentiate how you're engaged when you come to, in our case, a Four Seasons hotel versus a Mandarin Oriental.
You are speaking about freedom.
I'm sorry, what?
You are speaking about freedom.
Right.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Johannes, do you want to?
Well, I'm very much on the page of both of you, actually, because I think also, you know, being individual. I mean, we're all individuals by nature, and being treated like an individual, I think, is a very important thing. And by being treated by an individual, I mean when you meet other people in the world, you have to feel that you are actually, you know, on the same level. There's no difference. I mean, if we're kings or queens or royalties, it doesn't matter. We are all people, and we have the same, you know, same humanity and the same desires. And when you enter a premises, it can be a luxury hotel, shopping experience, and so on. It has to be, you have to be felt welcome. And this is the biggest and most important thing. So it comes back to service and humanity. Reality. This is all it takes. It's
no,
so
Queen
simple.
Is doing PP as us.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't you come up on stage, all of you? So we're all the same.
I am afraid we are out of time. We could clearly keep going, but we are at break, so I encourage everyone in the audience to continue the conversation, and we will see you back here at 11:20. Yay.